Guys, to stop with that, and I noticed that you receive selective information about everything. I came here to be the manager of Manchester United, not to be the coach of Manchester United. And that is clear. I know that my name is not Tuchel, it's not Conte, it's not Mourinho, but I'm the manager of Manchester United. And it's going to be like this for 18 months, or when the board decided to change. So that was my point. I want to finish with that. I'm not going to quit. I will do my job until other guy is coming here to replace me.
Do you feel that, maybe certain assurances around things about the ability to manage this team that you thought you had? Do you not feel that?
I just want to say that I'm going to be the manager of this team, not just the coach, and I was really clear on that. And that is going to finish in 18 months, and then everyone is going to move on. That was the deal. That is my job, not to be a coach. If people cannot handle the Gary Nevilles and the criticisms of everything, we need to change the club. No, guys, I just want to say that I came here to be the manager of Manchester United, not to be the coach. And every department, the scouting department, the sport director needs to do their job. I will do mine for 18 months, and then we move on.
Thank you, guys.
Drew at Leeds today. Nobody, I think, is particularly surprised that that is one of the great, you know better than me, one of the great furious fixtures in English football. Leeds, Man United, and at Ellen Road, Leeds can do damage to anyone.
Yeah.
So that is unremarkable. But Ruben Amorim's had some really interesting post-match things to say, hasn't he? Which I think you know more about than me. So you tell me.
Well, no, it came up to me during the first half. I'd not seen it myself, but apparently it was some bizarre comments around I'm a manager, I'm not a head coach, which I just said before, didn't I, about Maresca, about once you start this sort of what would be game playing in your press conferences, obviously something is annoying him. He's obviously not feeling the support. He's obviously sort of letting go. When you say that you come to the club as a manager, I don't know, I'd have to check it. I thought he was appointed as the head coach of the football club and quite clearly appointed to coach the team. Manager is a title that we don't see, I don't think, anymore. I'm not sure whether even Pep Guardiola is the manager of Manchester City or he's head coach. Manager suggests that he's saying he wants to manage more than just the training ground performance. He wants to overlook other parts of the club, because I played under a manager and they basically have a greater say in what would be other parts of the club, including recruitment, including sort of academy, including style of play, including the way in which maybe the club goes about their pre-season friendlies and the sort of the other things. So I think he's suggesting maybe that he needs to be given the ability to manage more departments of the club. Because I think there was part of his quote, and I've not seen the press conference at all, so I'm talking here just from seeing them sent through to me by the Sky producer, about basically other people having to do their jobs in their departments, which again seems that he's not happy with something. So something's happened there in the last week with the quotes that are coming out that mean that Ruben Amorim is now starting to unleash a little bit, and as Maresca did, that I've had the worst 48 hours. It's not quite that, but it's something similar in a way which it's not explicit what he means, but everyone's having to read it, between the lines what he means, which looks to me like he's not happy with something within the hierarchy. That's the sort of thing that basically is coming out of it. He's mentioned my name in there as well, apparently. I think that's one of the sort of things that managers tend to do towards difficult periods. They tend to sort of have a go at pundits. No problem with that whatsoever. I've actually been quite supportive in the last few weeks of Manchester United's performances against Bournemouth and against Aston Villa and against Newcastle. Thought they were very good. I couldn't be supportive after the game the other night against Wolves, if that's what Ruben Amorim was referring to. It wasn't right the other night against Wolves, and you have to say that as well. It wasn't right when we played against Everton with 10 men and we kept 3 players at the back. So I am going to call out when I see things that aren't right, because that's my job. But that aside, I think the bigger problem isn't what he said necessarily about me. In fact, it isn't a problem at all. It's more the problem of what he's saying and what he's insinuating is happening behind the scenes. Maybe around the transfer window in January. Maybe he felt that the club would support in January. But I must admit, I was surprised that Manchester United spent that much money in the summer, because when they got knocked out of the Europa League, I mean, everyone knew that Manchester United's financial situation, you just have to look at the numbers. You don't have to base it. This is not guessing. Just go and look at the sort of accounts. They haven't got any money. It's a staggering thing to say, but after 10 to 12 years of mismanagement, of really shocking recruitment, of wastage, of lack of investment in the stadium, of all these things that have come to a fore in the last couple of years, means that Manchester United are currently tight on cash. One of the biggest football clubs in the world. They found, was it 150 or 180 million in the summer? Something like that. On 3 players. They signed Sesko, Mbeumo and Cunha, which obviously was massive, massive investment. And everyone was like, where did that money come from all of a sudden? And so I'm not surprised that there isn't any further money, to be fair, in January. But he obviously wants players, Ruben Amorim. He probably wants a midfield player. He probably wants another wing-back. If he's going to cement that 3-4-3 system, it's clear he needs another wing-back who can play in those wide areas. It's a unique position that isn't sort of, if you like, a specialist by many. And Manchester United do need a central midfield player of force, of power, of presence. They needed that in the summer, but they chose to go and strengthen up top. So maybe he's been told in the last week or two that he's not getting any players. I don't know. I genuinely don't know what the situation is, but it's not going to go away. And when these press conferences of this ilk start, it's never usually good.
It does. You mentioned Maresca and perhaps the parallels. Don't know enough about it to know how far those parallels go, but it does speak to the key relationships within a football club, doesn't it? Which seem to me to be more complex these days, where there are directors of football and the boss isn't necessarily the ultimate boss. In your day, when Fergie, in the nicest possible way, was a kind of benign dictator, you know, what he said in any department went. He didn't really have to concern himself with those relationships. It was a kind of simpler dynamic, wasn't it?
Yeah, because he came in the 80s and he controlled the recruitment, he controlled the style of play, he controlled the academy, he controlled the coaches through the system, he controlled who was in the medical department. It was his team. That's obviously not the modern way. No one's expecting any club to run like that. I think my sort of more recent lived experiences of the challenges of sort of being in a football club come from really with Salford for me. Yeah. You know, I've sacked managers too early. I've openly talked about getting it completely wrong with sacking managers. Completely wrong sometimes by having too much conversation with the manager and sometimes having not enough conversation with the manager. Sometimes, you know, you think that basically you're doing things the right way, but it's quite clear that you're not. And you know, I always remember, and I've talked about this, and somebody who's doing brilliantly well, Graham Alexander at Bradford City, and I'm absolutely delighted that he's doing well because he's an unbelievable professional and I never, ever should have lost his job at our football club, and I should never have sacked him. And I've said this publicly 5, 6, 7 times. So I've lived this experience of getting it wrong and doing it badly. And you always want more as an owner. Well, the style of play is not right. It's not entertaining enough. The results aren't right. You're always searching for more. You're always thinking that more can happen. You know, I've got the balance more right in the last 2 or 3 years in the sense of being far more passive in terms of my ownership. But for that first 7 or 8 years, I was very sort of active in and around the club. And for a large part of those years, we got 4 promotions in 5 years. We won a trophy at Wembley. But in the last couple of years, I made some sort of decisions there that, because you just get carried away a little bit at times and you don't quite get it right. You sometimes get a little bit too anxious in your decision making and you make decisions that you wouldn't make in other business decisions in a football club because of emotion and passion. And also, how much do you talk to a manager as an owner? How much do you talk to a sporting director as an owner? How little do you talk to them? When does advice become dictating policy? You know, it's really challenging. If you go to a sporting director as an owner and say, I don't like the way we're playing, and that sporting director doesn't handle that information properly by going passing that to the manager, all of a sudden you've got a fracture. And I'm not saying that's happening at Chelsea or at Manchester United, but it can happen. I've seen it happen. I've lived it and done it and got it wrong all the way through and got a lot right as well. But it's not easy to have that sort of what will be right amount of contact, that communication, how much communication you give, you know, what you tell a manager on the way in, and then what, you know, was Ruben Amorim promised when he came in that he would be the manager of the football club, he would have a say on all recruitment, all influence on style of play through the club, all influence on academy, all influence on the coaches. If he was, then that's the point he's making. He was given the title of head coach, I think. So that's the thing, we don't know. Sometimes when things are all rosy in the garden early on in a relationship, you say things to people and you commit to each other, and then all of a sudden the results go badly. And one thing we can't deny with Manchester United, forget all the noise that'll go on in the next 24, 48 hours, the performances and the results are not good enough for the football club. And in the last few weeks, I've been quite sort of mellow around the fact that I've seen 2 or 3 performances that I've really liked, even when Manchester United have lost at Villa or drawn against Bournemouth at home. If I really, to be fair, was thinking like Gary Neville was thinking 20 years ago about what a Bournemouth draw at home would look like, I'd be saying that's a disgrace. But I know the club's got to rebuild from a foundation of sort of a lower level. And it's not just going to be a case of getting right back to the top in 10 seconds. So performance does matter. So I think against Newcastle, against Bournemouth and against Villa, I mean, there was only 4 points picked up out of 9. But I actually thought there was something that really could be built off. I actually thought today against Leeds, I thought defensively United were very strong. I thought they were very solid in the game. I thought they handled the crowd well. I thought they handled the atmosphere well. I thought they fully deserved the point out of the game. That's why I was surprised at the end to hear of Ruben Amorim's comments, because I thought, you've got a point away from home at Leeds. You've just had a disastrous result against Wolves at home. But there's Burnley to go in 3 days. There's no real need for a fire right now. But there's a fire being created. And to be fair, he's always been authentic, Ruben Amorim. He's always had integrity in his press conferences. He's always said what he believes and he thinks. And he should do. He should carry on as he is. But it does look like he's now starting to point upwards, which ordinarily does bring pressure with it.
Well, it's very pointed comments from Ruben Amorim. To clarify, his position, the one that he was appointed to at Manchester United, was that of head coach. But he said it repeatedly, Jamie, I'm here to be the manager of Manchester United, not the coach. What do you think is going on here? And bearing in mind that Enzo Maresca has just left Chelsea, a month on from starting to challenge, it felt like, the executive at the football club.
It can only be 2 things. It can either be about the January transfer market, that he doesn't feel like he's being backed, or the people above him are questioning the fact that he almost at this moment is flip-flopping between systems. And it started to look like he was getting somewhere, or maybe moving to a back 4. He went back to the 5 at the back against Wolves, and possibly one of the worst performances that you'll see from a team this season against Wolves, I would say. But no matter what it is, I don't think he is in any position whatsoever to be questioning the people who appointed him.
Why not?
Because he's not good enough. He's not good enough to be Manchester United's manager. He's barely competent enough to be a Premier League manager right now. And that's not me being disrespectful to Ruben Amorim. I think he's been there now well over 12 months. And I think the majority of managers in the Premier League who are all managing different other clubs at different ends of the table would look at Manchester United and think, I'd get more points than that. I really do believe those managers would believe that. And I believe they would as well. Because this is a guy who, don't forget, as well said at one stage, this is possibly the worst Manchester United team in history. He's managing it.
Well, I mean, that graphic doesn't tell a great story in terms of support of Ruben Amorim, in the fact that only Spurs, West Ham and Wolves of the Premier League ever-presence have picked up fewer points since Amorim was appointed. Forest, Fulham, Bournemouth, Everton, Brighton, Brentford, all with more. Might he argue, or his supporters argue, that he hasn't been backed enough, Jamie, when you look at what they've been able to bring in? Just 2 transfer windows.
He's been more than backed. I mean, he couldn't have had too many complaints if the club parted company with him in the summer on the back of how poor it was last season. But they then went into the market and spent a lot of money on the attack.
207 million on 3 players this summer.
OK, now whether that was, I'm sure he was heavily involved in that. Now, he's playing a system that is not in the traditions of Manchester United. So there was no way they could recruit all the attacking players and the wing-backs and maybe the centre-backs that he wanted. It was going to be over a long-term plan in terms of windows. But he can be complaining now about not having funds in January. Manchester United put a huge amount there in the summer. Don't forget, they had no Champions League football, no European football. A lot of that was down to him and how the team performed last season. Let's not forget, when he was brought in, the idea was to try and get them Champions League football. They were 4 points off the Champions League when he came in. They finished 15th. So when you talk about a lack of funds, that was down to him and the team and the players. And there was no way that he's going to get everything that he wants in one window.
I just wonder if some Man United fans would support him when you think how sort of fragile the bench seemed today, the lack of options that are at his call right now. And yes, the AFCON plays a little bit of part in that. There are injury problems as well. But you say yourself constantly, they don't have players in central midfield that challenge other top teams. Maybe that's what he feels that he really needs right now to give himself a fighting chance.
Well, of course they need better players, but it can't come in one window. And he decided to go with the attacking players, or the club decided to go with the attacking players. They could have gone with one midfielder, one attacker, one wing back. They didn't, and that's maybe going to come in future windows. But the people he seems to be having a go at, you think of Berrada and Jason Wilcox. They're the ones who brought him in, and they're probably in some ways fighting in the summer to keep him in a job. I'm sure Jim Ratcliffe's looking at that situation thinking, you've brought this guy in, he doesn't play the way Manchester United have done of the past, the results are horrendous. What is this? What's this about?
But he also said, so Jim Ratcliffe said, we're going to give him 3 years and we'll find out about him. That was his idea.
That was just to calm the talk of the press about him being
Well,
sacked.
how did you think this ends now?
I think what I said about Maresca rings true with Amorim, in that this could be over very quickly. But Maresca was in a much stronger position to challenge his board or his owner than he was. He won the Club World Cup. He got the team into the Champions League. He did everything he was asked to do last season. Champions League football, won the European trophy, Club World Cup, won, done. I still didn't think it was acceptable to challenge the people above him. Amorim is in no position whatsoever to speak like that because, as I said, he's a barely competent Premier League manager so far on what he's shown.
Their next 3 matches, they go to Burnley, Manchester City in the derby on the 17th, then they go to Arsenal.
Maybe he wants to get out before them, certainly City and Arsenal.
But there's probably going to be some hope that the key players will be back from AFCON, that Bruno is going to be fit, that Mason Mount might be fit, that De Ligt and Maguire might be fit, and suddenly that picture looks very different, doesn't it?
It does look different, and you know what it tells you when you're reading those names off? It's not the worst squad in the world as what he painted them at times last season, and he should be doing a lot better than the results he's getting. Hence why I'm saying he's in no position whatsoever to be calling the shots to people above him. No one looks at that squad and thinks it's challenging for a title or a guaranteed Champions League position. But having no European football this season, they should be challenging for the Champions League positions.
We will see what...
That's a very, very interesting interview. Adamant that he came here to be the manager of Manchester United and not the coach. What do you think that has to do with?
Well, number one, I was very honest. For me, number two, that stays behind closed doors, that conversation. I'm not sure he's going to gain anything by coming out and saying that to the press and to the media. I really don't. Unless he wants to be sacked, which could be. You don't come out and say that unless there's some other reason where he's thinking, he said, I won't quit, but he's almost opened the door for the hierarchy and people to say, well, he's actually talking about 18 months down the line, he'll be off, or somebody else will come in, or whenever they decide. And he's almost opened the door to that option. And it was a strange one, but it was very honest of him. He has been very honest since he's been here, sometimes too honest.
Well, there's an implication then of a power struggle, isn't there?
Oh, definitely. There's a high level of frustration. You could see that. I don't know what the initial question was, but the answer didn't seem, whatever that question was, the answer seemed to be too giving than the question. But reading that and listening to that, I would go, well, if you're talking about leaving in 18 months' time, why would I give you funds to strengthen or change the squad when you're not going to be here within that time frame? So he's probably hurt his chances of getting any new signings because now you're talking about leaving. So, again, if his objective is to get players, I don't think he's achieved that. If his objective was to potentially get sacked or leave the club via their choice, then he may have succeeded.
It seems like it might be about signings. The reason why we're saying if it's about being sacked is because we've seen something very similar happen a couple of weeks ago at Chelsea, and now we're seeing that situation. Is that why you're thinking this sounds awfully familiar?
It sounds to me as if he was told, yes, you'll have a say in all the players that you want to bring into the team, the way you want to play. And that's said to him, and that's what happens when you go to a club. It hasn't worked out as well as they expected at United. He didn't want to come till the end of the season anyway. He came mid-season, and that wasn't really in his mind. But then he feels probably at the moment that those promises are being deflected. And as Joleon's just said, well, if you're saying, well, after 18 months, I'm going to leave anyway, or you're going to make a change whenever you want to make a change, he's not really putting himself in a great position to go and get those players and say, look, I want him, him and him. This is the system we're going to play, and these players will suit that system. That's not happening, obviously, behind the scenes, and I think that's why he's come out and said it, and watch this space, I would say.
Yeah, we're all watching the space very closely now, especially after that, I think, outburst in the press conference after another draw against Leeds this time around. Just since you're a former Premier League manager, no one better than you to tell us right now, how does it all work together in that ecosystem? Because, as you said, it sounds like it's about transfers and the window is open right now. Sporting directors, as he mentioned, scouts, all working together?
The only way it works, and any club that you're going to see, you know, the top three clubs at the moment, if you're talking about Arsenal, City and Villa, their managers, those three managers, they're concerned in decision who comes in to the club. They're the ones who make the decision on how they're going to play, and look where they are. All three of them, they're top of the league for a reason. It doesn't sound like United that's happening. You have to be hand in glove with the sporting director or the director of football, however you want to do it. The recruitment has to take responsibility as well. But that has to be, excuse me, that has to be good communication on the level of the manager, coach, doesn't matter, manager or coach, you're in control of that team. That's why you've been brought in, to get results, week in and week out. This is the way we're going to play. We'll change it maybe, but that's his decision. And his decision to bring players in that suits that. He hasn't changed. He keeps playing the three at the back. If he's saying to them, I need better players to play this system, it will work eventually, then he hasn't adjusted at the moment to get better results. You know, they've been very inconsistent.
Yeah.
So there has to be communication. And it looks like that's broken at the moment. And if it's broken, at the end of the day, we always know what happens. The manager will be sacked.
Yeah, as you mentioned, that system that he plays, he did actually change 4 at the back against Newcastle, and that was their only win in 5 in the Premier League. And now, you know, draws against Wolves, draws against Leeds, as you said, frustrated, and the on-pitch business is not being done.
Yeah, definitely. And results always impact the feel within a club. I'm sure if they was winning them games, that there wouldn't be this much frustration and disjointed harmony within the group. But like Ben said, I think the communication is key, and I think what's the problem is when the message changed. So when he came, it's, what do you want? I want to be the manager. I want to be involved in this. I want to be involved in that. Oh, yeah, no problem, because we want you. But you have to come now. Okay, as long as I come now, I'm involved in these processes. As time goes on, results are not going well, and all of a sudden the club say, you're not involved in that. You're not involved in that. Just do this. And now all of a sudden he's like, well, I didn't come for that reason. So as soon as the message change, for a player, for a manager, for whoever it may be, that's when frustration comes. And it's hard to live with. And I think at other clubs, it's clear. You only do this, or you do all of these things. And Man United, it doesn't seem to have that clarity.
I was in the post-match press conference. I'm sure by now that video has circulated the players' WhatsApp group, and everyone will have seen it. What do you think they'll be thinking?
I think they'll be anticipating a change. I think they'll be aware of certain level of frustrations, because that isn't the first time he's shown that to the group, whether it's around results or performances. But yeah, I think some of them players will be thinking sooner or later, we're going to get a new coach.
And that's why I think that conversation needs to be in-house, you know, because it needs to be between the board, it needs to be between the sporting director, the recruitment. That needs to be something. And perhaps they've had those positions. What's happened, what you're saying, Joe, the goalposts have changed since when he came in, walked in the door, because of the results. They can't actually see, they can't envisage at the moment the future. So at the end of the day, it's going to break down.
Another point then for Manchester United, and that's what led Ruben Amorim to that post-match reaction, which we've just shown you. A point that takes Manchester United level with Chelsea in 6th place. Chelsea got a point at Manchester City, who moved back into 2nd, but they are now 6 points behind Arsenal in the title race. They've got 48 points. Villa also got back to winning ways. They are now behind City only on goal difference. A point for Liverpool at Fulham means they are on 34 points. Brighton, Newcastle, Sunderland Sunderland and Brentford also in the top half of the table. In the bottom half of the table, Wolves getting their first victory over West Ham, a big one in the relegation battle. Burnley also still in trouble, and Nottingham Forest just outside of the drop zone. Match week 20 in the Premier League is done and dusted. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Jolie, and thank you to all of you. We will see you next time.
Nice try, Jules. He's not going to be drawn into those kind of conversations about the transfer window, but we will, won't we? 8 players missing, and as she just pressed Phil there, look, there are players that could be coming back soon, and how desperately they need them.
Well, they will be coming back soon. That's why I'd be surprised if they did anything in January, because they've only really got this competition really to play for. So there's no real European football. So there's not that many opportunities to play a lot of players. Kobe Mainoo can barely get a game as it stands. So I think obviously when Bruno comes back, Ahmad and Burma, the team will be a lot stronger. You know, they could probably maybe do with an extra body in midfield. You know, a lot of talk about Elliot Anderson or Wharton or Baleba, but I do think that's probably for the summer. And I think they have enough to finish in the top 5. And I know it's been a tricky season, but if they can finish in the Champions League places after what happened last season, then I think that everybody will rip your hand off with that.
What would that mean for the future of Ruben Amorim?
If they finish in the top 5 and they get in the Champions League, I think he can build on it. Like Owen said, I think it'll be United isn't quite the draw that it was. It's not they can just decide that they want to bring someone to the club. They need to have that Champions League football alongside it. But there's a long way to go, and they need to improve on what they've showed in recent weeks. When they do get the players back that make them tick, they've got to be pushing up the league, because ultimately everyone's been quite sloppy in and around them for them to be in that position. You'd like to think that they're going to kick on. Can they put a run together? Can they be ready when the guys come back? We wait to see.
You can see there, obviously at the moment, they missed out on a chance to go top 4, but there's still plenty more football to play, and it's positive if you've got players coming back in. Burnley is their next game away. Are they going to be looking at that game and going, look, we're eyeing up 3 points, surely?
Yeah, 100%, especially after the way the first fixture went. I know it'll be a little bit tricky, obviously, playing Burnley away. And then they've got City and Arsenal, you know, so then we'll see exactly where they're going to be. I think Fulham are in 12th, 4 points between the two teams. So it's very, very tight from 4th all the way up to 12th. So there's an opportunity to get up. I think even if they beat Burnley, they can go past Liverpool. So there's a chance there. You know, they haven't taken it so far this season. They'll get some more. They need to take one of these when they come.
OK, guys, that's all we've got time for. So we're going to head you two off to go and get warm. It's been brilliant. Thank you for your company, and thanks, everyone.
Ya saltan 1K y el Barrio. Es determinante cuánto daño puede hacer el conjunto de 1K, sobre todo con Granero en esas primeras de cambio en la salida de escalera. Así que esa parte del partido va a ser absolutamente clave para el equipo de Iker Casillas. Por cierto, felicitar porque ha venido una buena afición de 1K.
Tiene la pelota Gerard Noya en cara, sigue Noya, dispara, Arnalot.
80 paradas.
paradas ya para Arnalot. Gil Vidal ataca desde la derecha el número 9. Gil Vidal con el centro, buena pelota, Arché, con la rodilla le pegó. Pues es el que desatasca un poco el partido, ¿no? Con centros, ojo ahí, se golpeó, el remate, ¡gol! ¡Mar Valiente! ¡Gol! ¡Del Barrio! ¡Marca Mar Valiente! Esa banda izquierda que es terreno de los cañonazos de Granero, a la que tengo un mínimo de espacio, le pega Granero. Bueno, pues es decirlo, y ahí lo tenemos. El tema es que el remate le ha salido centrado. Abraham, buena pelota, banda derecha. Vamos a ver qué hace ahí Fran Rodríguez. Se mete en el área, sigue Fran. ¡Qué bien, Fran! Se va de 2, el remate, ¡fuera!
¡Chicos!
A ver si acierta. ¡Claro que
Mira
sí!
acá.
Busca el Barrio el segundo gol. Arché para Gil. Gil que le puede pegar a este Gil. Buen recorte. Gil al palo. Levanta Arché.
¡Dios! ¡No! Madre mía, qué parada. Y a centímetros del remate, ¿eh?
No, la reacción ha sido impresionante. ¡El disparo! ¡Madre de Dios! ¡Otro que vuela! ¡Otro más! Que está la pelota para John de la Cruz, la quiere levantar, vuelve a pegar la pelota en el cuerpo de un jugador del Barrio, el remate con la puntera y acaba deteniendo a Gerard Vacas. Será córner favorable a 1K. Bueno, a ver.
Gol doble.
A ver, saque de banda. Balón puesto en movimiento, intentaba rematar Mar Valiente, el remate, ¡gol! ¡Bumper! ¡Gol!
Y
Y es...
¡Penalti
¡Madre
normal!
mía lo de los penaltis!
¡Penalti normal! Y el que quiere hacer el 0-3 es el número 4 de Pega Valiente. ¡Vaya cañón! ¡Gol! Ahí están, Arnalot y Vacas como candidatos, como guardametas, y también Mar Valiente y Pau Ferojo la recuperación. Tiene la pelota al Barrio que puede sentenciar el remate. ¡Gol!
Knockout.
¡Let's go, Barria! Ponme el 5, ponme el 5, ponme el 5.
El cambio del partido ha sido radical en los últimos 10 minutos. El balón que lo tiene. ¡Ojo!
¡Ay, ay, 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 ay! Jaimitada.
Marca de nuevo el Barrio, gol de Fran Fuentes. El equipo de Juan Arroita, que no ganaba un encuentro con esta tranquilidad, entre comillas, al final, con un margen tan amplio, con 2 goles dobles que han hecho pasar el partido del 0-3 al 0-7.
Paufer, ha costado, pero por fin ha llegado esa victoria tan deseada con goleada.
Ha costado mucho, pero bueno, le damos emoción hasta el momento final, recta final, y ahora, pase lo que pase con Pío, nos lo jugaremos contra ellos.
Eso te iba a decir, pase lo que pase con Pío, la semana que viene, o ellos, o tú, o tu ex equipo, o tú.
Bueno, o el Barrio o ellos, pero sí. La vida, yo qué sé, no sé, son cosas muy raras que suceden, pero ahí estaremos. Ahora estoy en el Barrio, así que espero que gane el Barrio.
Enhorabuena y a disfrutarlo.
Gracias.